So this is a story that kind of came out of nowhere, although it's not surprising that it came up. But the Quebec Community Groups Network figures now that the elections are over, maybe the Anglophone community is looking to fix the huge, what we call disconnect between Anglos and the government, especially given the fact that the premier came out the other day and said, look, I'm going to be a new man. I'm going to be more conciliatory. I'm going to listen more. I'm going to cooperate more. Does that mean with Anglos as well? Well, the Community Groups Network thinks this is a perfect opportunity, at least, to suggest a minister for Anglos as a fresh start for this new government. Eva LUDVIG is president of the Quebec Community Groups Network, and she's on the line. Eva, good afternoon.
Hi, Aaron.
Eva, tell us why this is, do you think, now the right time? Is this just because of what I said with respect to Francois Legault? What's changed?
Well, as you said during his victory speech, Premier Legault reached out to us, to all minorities, and he said he's going to govern for all, and we're taking him at his word. And we think that given all our concerns and issues and the difficulties we faced over the past 4 years, where we were not heard, where we didn't seem to be relevant, we thought now is the time for the Quebec government, for the Monsieur Legault and company, to show that they are ready to include us in the Quebec society as we see ourselves. And we think a minister responsible for relations with English-speaking Quebecers is one way to go and is an important step. Not only will it allow for the Quebec government to know our concerns, because we would then have someone who will be listening to us, who will be hearing our concerns, and will then be able to pass it on in an effective way to the Quebec government. Somebody who sits at the table with the other ministers and who's able to talk about our concerns regarding health and social services, education, access to justice, and all the other things that have been affected now by Bill 96.
So I will say, Eva, as I hear you say this, I remember in the past when Marlene Jennings was still at the QCGN, and we would talk about Christopher Skeet, because Christopher Skeet was supposed to have been the one that communicated what the Anglo community wanted, and I'm going to say in your case what QCGN was pushing for, and he had the premier's ear. Did that not work? Because you just said we were not heard. Were we not heard, or was he not paying attention, or did those conversations go nowhere?
Well, look, Mr. Skeet was a member of the National Assembly. He was not a minister. He was not sitting at the table, at the cabinet table, where many of the decisions are made on policy and on programs and resources and all the things that can help the English-speaking community, and then also build a bridge towards the CAC government. And the government is made up of ministers of various different departments, obviously headed up by the premier. But the premier always has a lot on his plate, and we think a minister dedicated to the English-speaking community is the answer.
Okay, I'm not going to go to Chris Skeet again. I did want to mention we asked Christopher Skeet to come on as part of this segment. He declined our request. And I'm wondering, the way you're describing this, Eva, that he was there in the past. You're right. He's not a minister. At least he wasn't at the time. Who knows what's going to happen in the next cabinet that's set up. Is the suggestion was, because he made a big point of it. I remember having talked to him on the air several times saying, I'm going around the province. I'm listening to Anglo groups here and there, and I'm taking these suggestions and the things I learn and bringing them directly to the premier. With all of that, was nothing accomplished?
Well, let's just take a look at the results. The past 4 years has been very difficult for the English-speaking community, including the run-up to the elections, where our issues were not even discussed. We invited the premier to speak to the English-speaking community. He said he did not have time. He did not have time for a debate in English. And so we are interpreting this as the time to appoint a minister dedicated to our issues. It always helps to have someone at the right level to be able, and it's not just the premier, it's all the other ministers who are responsible for the so many things that affect us on a day-to-day basis.
All right. Now, look, I think, on the surface, people might look at this and think it's a great idea, while others perhaps might think this just is kind of pie in the sky. I asked Jim Meny, who's a regular contributor here on the show, about this idea, the QCGN idea, of a minister for Anglos. I want you to hear what he had to say, and then you can tell me what you think. Brian?
I think the idea stinks. I thought it stank 10 years ago. Yes, that's right, 10 years ago. Here's Eva LUDVIG of QCGN saying there's this huge disconnect between the Quebec government and the Anglophone community. I would say so because we already have a minister responsible for the Anglophone community. His name is Francois Legault. He has had the job from day one. And you've seen where that has taken us, okay? I've never been crazy about the idea. First of all, I don't like the idea of us being hermetically sealed as some kind of, and I'll use the expression again, like we're some kind of Fabergé egg, although we're not. We're more of a soccer ball with this government. I get uncomfortable with it. We don't get special treatments in anything else. We pay the same taxes as everybody else. We face far more obstacles thanks to this government, and to be fair, previous governments as well. But the idea that for some reason somebody's got to be, wrapped up in cellophane, I guess, put in one corner of the cabinet table, he just does the English stuff. No, as a Quebecer whose first language is English, I am not very comfortable with that, and I would oppose that to my last breath, except on one condition, guys. Because between the time I sent you my sked and the time we're talking now, it occurred to me who would be the absolutely perfect minister for relations with English language Quebecers. And remember, with our system, you don't have to be a sitting MNA to sit in cabinet. Can you imagine who that person might be?
So I'm not going to spoil the can you imagine. I want you to get your reaction, Eva, to what Jim had to say.
Well, I think he has a point. Obviously, the record has not been great. Let's put it that way. But we have to try something. And I don't think this person is necessarily going to be sitting at a corner and wrapped in cellophane. No, I don't think so. What we are talking about, and it doesn't necessarily have to be someone whose only responsibility is the English-speaking community, but it has to be someone who is open to our community, who understands our community or wants to learn about our issues. And this is not such a pie in the sky. It happens in other provinces. And what are we going to do? Throw up our hands? No, we have to start thinking about what can be done. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. We move on to something else.
I'm taking this to mean that you actually, and I mean this in the nicest of ways, so we refer to the Premier's speech on election night where he went out of his way, of course, and even in English, and he spoke in English more than anyone else did that night, suggesting that he's going to work with everybody else and be a Premier for all of Quebec. When I asked the question if people bought that, most people said no. He said the same thing 4 years ago, and look what happened. So why are you so optimistic that it might be different this time?
Well, I think we have to respond to an opening. And if it is now up to the Premier to respond and to be true to his word. We'll have to see.
Okay. Eva, I wish you luck. I mean, I think a lot of people, know that Quebec, or maybe don't know, the Quebec Community Groups Network is behind the scenes typically making the case for Anglos in this province. By the way, the one other question I have for you is based on what happened election night when we know that, the Liberals retained pretty much Montreal and nowhere else in Quebec did they win a seat. Does that make you, you call the Quebec Community Groups Network. Are we really the Montreal Community Groups Network?
Well, just because of the results of the election doesn't mean that our concerns are solely in Montreal. Yes, our offices are in Montreal, but we have members in the Eastern Townships. We have member groups in the Eastern Townships, in West Quebec, in the Lower North Shore. We have members everywhere, and of course, 80% of the English speakers live in Montreal. There's no question about that. But the reality is that the results of the election really isolate Montreal and just emphasizes the division between the Francophone and the minorities, I have to say, not just the English speakers, which I think is really does not speak well for Quebec. And that is another thing that we can do with the minister is also work with them in order to break down some of this divide so that there's a better understanding rather than the division that we have been seeing over the past 4 years.
Eva, I thank you so much for the time. Very much appreciate it.
Pleasure.
Eva LUDVIG, the president of the Quebec Community Groups Network. I'm reading some of your text messages saying, it's delusional to think that the Premier, the government, really wants anything to do or anything more to do with Anglos or would give us anything more at all. We shall see.